Mr. Mersucci.
Just for clarification for the public, I know this has been covered in the Daily Breeze on several occasions, but could you explain, I mean, it's not like we have bullets flying over from the shooting range into Towers Elementary School, and yet you mentioned a shooting range, so could you explain how the lead worked its way into our sand lot?
There's an assumption, I guess you might call it, of how it happened, because they didn't have a cover over the top of it. The majority of the lead fragments were supposed to go down when they hit the target area, but some of them, for whatever reason, went up, and they're actually flattened out, obviously. And when they go up, I guess the breeze is enough that it can carry it into the neighborhood. DTSC is not only investigating Towers Elementary, they're also investigating other areas within the neighborhood. But because Department of Toxic Substance Control has a special school unit, they became very interested and involved in Towers Elementary, and we've been working closely with them. Currently, Redondo Beach Police Department has changed, and they no longer use lead in their bullets. It's now a ceramic type of slug.
Okay, thank you.
And Dr. Stabler, we've, since this was brought to our attention, complied fully with DTSC, of course.
Definitely. We work very closely with them, and I want to thank DTSC for all of their due diligence. They've been the one that has been at the front up until the time Dr. Mannon got in on Friday. They were the ones that have been up front with Redondo Beach Police Department and Redondo City Council.
Right, so that they understand that, as Mr. Lee said, that's really their burden. It's not our, it's not our lead.
Kindergartners didn't shoot that.
That's right, they did not. And then finally, it's my understanding, Dr. Stabler, that they don't use the range. Redondo Beach does not use the range while students are in class. Is that correct?
Definitely. My understanding is previously it actually was only being used on Wednesday evenings and Saturday during the days. That actually was closed for over 2 months. And as I said, now they have changed the type of bullets that they use.
But they're still not shooting while kids
No,
are
not at all.
there, of course. Okay. Okay, so other questions then, Mr. Mersucci?
Yes,
Sorry.
has the rest of the Towers Elementary School grounds been inspected for lead?
Actually, they're doing it right now, and this is an environmental company that's been hired by the city of Redondo Beach. They were actually out there today. They had metal detectors out on the grass. They had they were scraping all of the asphalt areas. They are cleaning off the roofs. They actually had a large sweeper out there on the asphalt areas today, and they'll be back tomorrow. Yes, they are going there. They're getting every piece of lead that they can find on the property.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Steffen?
So just to be clear, this is not something like that killed the Romans or something, lead in the pipe and stuff like that. They found a few fragments.
Actually, what brought this on originally, and what you're approving tonight has to do with the students, the kindergarten sandbox. They did 3 tests in that sandbox. 2 of them came back negative. 1 of them came back with a high enough lead content that it caused a concern with the Department of Toxic Substance Control. So as I said, 2/3 of even their tests were not even significant. They did not find significance on the playground. They did not find significance anywhere else. It's only in this one sandbox, and only 1 of the 3 tests proved significant.
Okay, seeing no other questions from the board, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor of approving this ratification for the emergency resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on then to the consent agenda, and I'll remind board members that we can take this individually by section, or we can get a motion to approve all of the consent items, pulling the ones that you're interested in. So, is there any?
Taking direction from the chair, of course, to approve the consent items, elementary consent, secondary consent, educational services consent, human resources consent, and administrative services consent But I actually, for the first time in a year of being up here, will actually pull a couple of items, which is the item on the, I'm so lame at this, I don't even, I have to, thank you. Administrative, ASC 14,
Yes.
15, or scratch that, 15 and 16. That's the two I want to pull.
So ASC numbers 15 and 16, not 14, is that correct?
Not 14, no.
Okay, 15 and 16. And can we add to that, Mr. Lee, general functions consent? You started with elementary, I believe.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, well, that's included in my motion.
Okay, very good. And are there other board members who would like to pull any of those items from the consent
Yeah.
besides ASC 15 and 16? Yeah, Mr. Stefan.
Administrative Services, number 11.
Okay, ASC 11. Mr. Marsucci, you, okay. Mrs. Reagan.
And while we're in ASC, ASC 9,
Okay.
9, and Human Resources 2. I know that's unusual.
Okay.
Thanks.
Human resources.
Okay, so we have a motion then for the approval of the consent agenda in its entirety, holding out Human Resources consent item 2, Administrative Services consent items 9, 11, 15, and 16. Do we have a second?
Second?
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Very good. We'll move then to Human Resources consent item number 2, Mrs. Reagan's.
Thank you. Actually, the comments I want to make are on page 10 of 11 in HRC 2, and it has to do with the longevity of some of our folks. I've been feeling the need to identify or recognize some folks who are doing so many years of wonderful service to our district that they are in our agenda, and if anybody reads them, they can see them. But I would like to make it a little bit more public. In this particular agenda, again on page 10, there's Patricia Hatter, who's been here for 10 years of accredited service. These are classified employees, by the way. And Kathleen Hodge, who has been here for 10 years. Daniel Chan, 15 years. And Kay Peterson for 15 years. And then there's 20 years, Hiroko Sumi and Michael Templeton. Those folks have given us such wonderful service that I just wanted to mention their names and thank them for that. And with that, I move for passage of the entire item.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Reagan's. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Very good. We'll move on to Administrative Services consent item number 9. I believe that's you also, Mrs. Reagan's. Yes, okay.
Actually, I just wanted to highlight this item. It is the authorization to accept project and file notice of completion for a new hardwood gym floor at North High School. And that's wonderful in and of itself, but I wanted to highlight that Toyota Motor Company donated $35,000 of the cost to replace that flooring. And I know that North High is very thankful, and then as a district, we appreciate our corporate sponsors in assisting us with those really expensive projects that we could not otherwise do. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Toyota, thank you. And with that, move for approval of the item.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and a thank you.
Yes.
To Toyota Motor Company. So those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Very good.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Reagan's. Moving on then to Administrative Services consent item 11. Mr. Stefan.
Yeah, and I apologize for not talking to you earlier about this item, giving you a heads up. But I just want a status now where we are with the West. This is Phase 2 remediation, where we are with the elevator at West, because
They will be working Thursday when school opens.
yay!
Tim, they're working.
All right, very good. So it's all up and
It's-
running.
this is it.
That Phase 2, there is no Phase 3.
No, there
other
is
than
no
turning
Phase
it on
3.
and going up.
That's right.
All right, I move that we approve ASC number 11.
Second.
Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Working elevators at West.
There you go.
That is a big deal.
They're supposed to work.
Yes. Okay, administrative services consent item, item 15, and I suppose we could take 15 and 16 together, Mr. Lee? Okay.
Yeah, this obviously is related to the bond and it's the agreement for construction management and for architectural services. And quite honestly, given the gravity of the item, here's the entire item. So I thought that maybe someone from the district can explain the process and what we went through, and it's a little bit more involved than 2 sides of an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper.
Yes. The district developed RFPs for both construction management services and architectural services. We sent out requests for proposals to 8 different architect firms. A committee of Dr. Stowe, Mr. Fielding, and myself, we reviewed the 6 proposals that were turned in. Of those 6 proposals, we recommended interviewing 4 of the firms. We actually interviewed 4 of the firms, and we're bringing to you a recommendation to hire 3 of the firms to work on the roughly $355 million worth of bond projects. HMC Architects is an architect firm that we have worked with previously. They've been very helpful to us in closing out current projects. They have a very good understanding of a lot of the modernization projects at our schools. Westberg and White, and Paul Westbrook is in our audience. He's one of the partners. He is a newer firm, but he impressed the committee very much with the work they have done previously. Actually, when you're looking at the athletic facilities, they did all of the Downey athletic facilities, now are state of the art, and I know our people go over there and wish there was some way we could have that. But anyway, and the other group, IBI, actually was the firm that did the plans for the 2-story classroom at Fern and did the modernization project at Fern, and according to Mr. Fielding, there were no problems on that project. It was probably one of the cleanest projects we had. So those are the 3 firms that we're recommending for architect. In reference to construction management, again, we sent out RFPs to 7 different construction management firms. Remember, one of them came here and made a presentation, Seville, and I invited them to propose on the particular project. 6 others, I got information on them from both the CASBO website and CASH website. CASH is the Coalition of Adequate School Housing. It's probably the #1 facilities group in the state of California, and so we invited 7 firms to turn in proposals. In the end, after an evaluation by myself, again, Dr. Stowe, Phil Fielding, and Ricky Perez, who is one of the works for HMC Architect, has a long involvement with the district, we decided to interview 3 firms, and the final recommendation on all of us, it was unanimous, was Barnhart, and that's the one we're bringing to you tonight.
And you use one construction management firm throughout the life of the bond and throughout?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And
I've done teaming before, and it's not a good process, I don't think.
And I'm not criticizing the process. I mean, that's kind of my job to set policy, your guys' job to execute on it, but I just kind of wanted to have a little bit more elaboration than this because of the importance of it. And
Correct.
And then if the community wants more information on the RFPs or whatever it may be, it's
They're
all
in my
public
office.
records. They're more than happy to see it. I would assume the price ranges for both the architectural kind of goes with what it is, but at least on the construction management, is that a standardized fee throughout the industry?
Not the way that it was presented. Actually, it was different in different. Some of them did it on an hourly rate for the type of individuals. Barnhart does it on a percentage basis, and that's the way that I've seen it done before, is on a percentage basis of the cost of the contract and the amount and the type of work that you're asking to do. There's 1%, there's a set percentage fee for them to do what is called construction management agency, which is to represent the district. Then there's another increased percentage fee when they're serving as the general contractor, and in the form that we are proposing, which is the multiple prime process. Then with them serving as a general contractor, they're assuming more responsibility, and so there is an increased percentage to that. But it is negotiable.
And is it negotiable by project, or it's not pre-negotiated in this? This is just
No.
this is just a services contract, which really isn't based, so people know.
There will be a contract
It's not based on
per
price.
project.
It's more on performance.
Yes.
And then we'll negotiate on each project what the correct fees are.
Correct.
And this is a contract that if we were to become unsatisfied with them in the future, is there a cancellation clause, and how long would that be?
We haven't even put the language in, but in every contract we negotiate, there is termination language.
Okay, let me go one step further. It's further than I wanted to go, but that's okay. We are approving an agreement, but without an agreement.
You're approving the architectural firms and the construction management firms, but there will be individual contracts for each project.
But there's no master agreement that it fits within.
There is a master agreement that they sign, yes, and as part of in both cases, as part of the RFP, it has a copy of is the district's master agreement. But I use that same master agreement for the bond council. It's standard language that can be used for termination. It's standard language that talks about insurance requirements, this type of thing. And I can show you, I've got a copy that I can show you. It's a standard agreement that we use. But it's not the actual agreement for the individual construction project.
Okay, and again, this is not a consideration, a criticism. It's more procedural, and I apologize. There was some stuff that happened this weekend that kind of got me off track. Is in the future, I mean, and I'm the king of not wanting short meetings and skinny agendas, but when we're dealing with stuff such as the bond or such as these services contracts that are a little higher profile than the standard, I'd probably in the future want to see more backup than this.
Okay.
Just from the standpoint of the ability to look at it, be able to read it ahead of time, be able to discuss it with members of the community and that kind of stuff, and to have it really available to the community as well as a public item. I know it's a public item, but you got to go through a little bit more of a process to get it. And I guess that's, a big part of this whole bond campaign is transparency, and the community can see whatever they want to see and however this goes through. And I'm comfortable with both of all these firms that we're involved in, so there's no way in the world this is a criticism of that. It's more that I want to see a lot more backup and information that the community can see so they can understand it as well.
Okay.
And that's it. Thank you very much, and I'll make a motion to approve items number 15, and 16.
We've already got the motion in the second, but Mr. Marsucci has a comment or question.
Yes, I just want to follow up on Mr. Lee. I know that Barnhart was the construction management company that was proposed for Measure T 2 years ago. And I know that I've talked to my share of people in the school construction business, and they all highly recommend Barnhart, and so I feel comfortable with Barnhart. But just to follow up on a point that Mr. Lee raised, what would be the process if for some reason we're unhappy with Barnhart Services and we terminated their contract, assuming that a bond or bonds, the two bonds pass? What would be the
We
process?
simply notice them.
Notice, send out RFPs for?
No, we noticed Barnhart that we're terminating our agreement with them. And we have, we use standard termination language in contract.
And in terms of finding a company to pick up where Barnhart would leave off if we were to terminate them, what would be that process?
Well, we would have to go back out. First of all, we'd have to look at why we wanted to do that and where the concerns were. And then we'd have to go back out and look at some RFPs. To be quite frank, if that happened, it would be very messy, and it would create a great deal of problems. Normally, the opposite occurs, to your question, where school districts have concerns, and they've gone with general contractors, and then have had concerns, and then they go to construction management. And as you know, Mr. Marsucci, one of our neighbors, followed that direction in their bond program.
So, assuming that the two bonds pass in November, when is construction scheduled to begin, and when is it scheduled to end?
What we will, go ahead. Yeah. What we will do, I can't really answer your question tonight. What we will do is the number one project that the board has indicated is Hull Middle School. So we will immediately assign one of the three architecture firms with Hull Middle School. At the same time that we'll be doing that, in conjunction with the architect firms and our construction management firm, will be to go through and provide to the board in a report an order of construction. Now, the assumption I'm going to make is that what the board will want to do, and we certainly will have this conversation before we go to the trouble of providing you that report, but what I assume that the board will want to do is to rank our schools from the worst to the best in terms of facilities. And therefore, the school that needs the most attention would be number 1, and the school that needs the least attention would be number 30. And from that, then we will develop construction schedules. And those construction schedules are based on the ability of the architects to produce what needs to be done, general conditions with the construction management firm, and finally, having the finance plan in place with the number of dollars that we particularly need to get those projects done before we sell the next section. So it's a fairly well thought out process that we like to go through that is developed and then placed with timelines, and I'm talking about timelines in years out there, that the board then will do in a public session of approving what I term the order of construction.
So, with all that in place, what is your best ballpark figure as to when we would start and when we would end?
Well, I think that one of the discussions that, obviously we'll start with some of the easier projects. My discussion that I'll be bringing to the board would be that some of the things we could do immediately, and immediately is like within a 9-month period, would be athletic facilities, and to have the dollars available to do some of those, because they're very visible, and we could move fairly quickly on some of those. And again, assigning Hull Middle School and the design for Hull Middle School would be the top project. Now, as far as how long that will go out, I believe it ranges to 12 years, doesn't it, Dr. Stabler?
No, the current bond issue is proposed in first of the major bond issues, 2009, 2012, and 2015, with the largest amount of money coming in around 2015. So what Dr. Mann is saying is correct. The first, because it's going to take a while with Hull and some of the other facilities. At this time we want to make sure the plans are complete as they go through Department of State Architect. And so we'll, as Dr. Mann said, we can start some of the projects right away once we sell the first issuance of bonds, which would probably be, I'm going to say March or April. We'll be able to have a first sale of about $60 million on one and about $30 million on the other. Then we'll start working with those funds, but then it could be 8 years down the road, 8 to 9 years down the road before you see completion of everything because of the amount of money available.
Okay. And finally, as to the architects, well, in the spirit of transparency, it's my understanding that HMC was the architects that correct me if I'm wrong, but we had some problems with, especially in regards to the West High School elevator situation.
They were the architect of record, correct, with the West High School. There were a number of issues involved. One of them was just the way that working within the state program. But yes, they were. And to be upfront with you, we are working with them on what we call, and they have said that there are errors in admissions, and we're working with them on those particular issues on those projects.
But they also stepped forward in the process where the board reached the settlement with the general contractor.
That's right.
So they were a major player in assisting in that lawsuit against the general contractor.
So the screening committee, of which you were a member, Dr. Stabler, you feel comfortable that notwithstanding apparent errors and omissions on the part of HMC as to the West High construction, that we will not, well, we have reasonable assurances that.
Yes. Yes, we do. And as I said, one of the major changes is that we're not under, well, I got to say, Department of State Architect actually changed their procedures, because before they would allow districts to go in with 50% plans, and in order to get their funding from the state. And that was one of the issues that districts had a problem with, was the way that the state set up the funding at the time. And so districts went in with 50% plans, and that was part of the problem with West High School, is the 50% plans, because then the architect has to come back during construction and complete the plans. And so you're starting out with incomplete plans, and that has to do with the state system. And the Division of the State Architect will not allow that anymore, to their credit. So you won't see the type of issues we saw last time. You won't see them this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marsucci. Mrs. Reagans.
Actually, thank you for asking that question, Mr. Marsucci, because actually I had a similar question about HMC, because I knew that they were involved last time. And you've answered somewhat how it will be different this time, which I think we need to emphasize to folks that it really will be different, especially with the construction management supervision and our supervision of the process. Barnhart, however, we did not use last time. We did not have a construction management service, correct?
And we paid for it.
Okay. So I just want the public to hear that's a huge change or difference in what we're doing this time.
The district in the previous situation had what was called a program manager, but they did not have a construction manager.
Okay. Which will mean much more on-site, eyeball-to-eyeball supervision and awareness of exactly what's going on. So the issues that came up last time when there wasn't that kind of supervision should not be an issue this time. We've done everything in our power to clean up all of that.
With one addition.
Yes?
That one addition, Mrs. Reagans, is that once the board approves these 3 architecture firms, we intend to meet with those architecture firms, and in signing a contract with them, we are going to require them to identify who the principal is that will deal only with us. So each architecture firm will have to identify the principal architect for TUSD, one architect.
Instead of letting them pass this around and.
Correct.
Exactly. Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Reagans. Mr. Steffen.
Well, we're being incredibly positive here, and I like that. We're talking about the potential of passing these bonds, and this is really getting ahead of the game, but there is I've done it in the past where you have peer review of plans. I mean, just to avoid errors and omissions where one architect
Correct.
firm might develop a set of
Correct.
plans, you then ship them off at a cost, but to another architect firm to double check.
Correct.
So is that something that we could look into later on?
No, excuse me, Mr. Steffen. I've used that in new construction, and I think it saves a considerable amount of money in new construction. We will do that in the whole middle school,
Okay.
because I just build that in as part of our process that we go through.
In our interviews with the construction management firms, those were some of the questions we asked concerning, and it's called constructability reviews.
Exactly.
And they actually, all of them, utilize that process, and they also do what is called value engineering.
Exactly.
Which means they look at, is that the district has standards, and is that the best product that we want to have in there? Is there something else we can look at from a cost or efficiency standpoint? But what Dr. Mannon is talking about, what you're talking about, are what are called constructability reviews, and every one of them talked about the importance of those reviews, working closely with the architect firms.
Thank you, Mr. Steffen. Mr. Lee.
Ever the insurance guy, the other layer of protection the community has in this process is that every single one of our contractors has to have what's called a fidelity bond. It's a performance bond in this form. And a performance bond works that basically if you have a $2 million project, you have to put up a $2 million bond that you'll complete the project. If the project's not completed, or if the contractor goes broke, or something goes along the way that he's not able to complete, you're able to exercise the bond, and then the bond monies, the completion bond, not the school bond money, but the completion bond, the fidelity instrument, is then able to complete the project. So we're trying to build in a bunch of layers of protection in this process, and again, was one of the concerns the community had, so I have no problem talking about it. And that will all be part of the bidding process as well. So and quite honestly, it makes doing government work rather hard for a lot of contractors because you have to have the financial strength. The bond is not like insurance where you buy $2 million worth of insurance, you have a claim, they pay $2 million. If you put up a fidelity instrument for $2 million, you basically have to have $2 million in assets or the ability to get it to be able to execute on that. So it's a little different process, and it adds an extra layer of protection for the citizens of Torrance. So that's my statement, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Marsucci.
Yes, final question for me. Just to follow up on Mrs. Reagan's, in terms of the point that Mrs. Reagan's, you were emphasizing the difference between the construction from Measure R from the 1998 bond and the current bond is this construction management package. And Dr. Stabler, you said for Measure R in 1998 we had a program manager, but this time we're going with the construction manager. Could you state for the public the difference?
Program manager represents the district in working with the architect and working with the contractors, kind of a go-between, but they really don't have any power. Construction manager actually is the agent of the district. Therefore, he has full power and authority in working with the architect and working primarily with the contractors. Because remember, what we're talking is multiple prime, which means we won't have one general contractor. He could be working with 20 different subcontractors. They're called prime contractors, actually, instead of subcontractors. Right. Mr. Steffen, when you were doing it, it was the same as a subcontractor, but they're individual. It would be an electrical contractor is doing the work, but he's reporting directly to this the general contractor, who in this case is our construction manager. Therefore, he is representing us directly. He's not the middleman, as a general contractor is, making overhead and profit on top of it. He is serving a dual role as the agent of the district and the general contractor. Much more protection.
So is it fair to say then that that with the 98 bond we had essentially the then superintendent and other educators overseeing construction, whereas this time we're going to have construction management professionals overseeing the construction?
I would say that we didn't have the superintendent overseeing, but I would say that our maintenance operations department obviously had very few employees, and so they hired somebody to, as I said, represent the district, kind of go between the two of them. But I don't think there was an actual district construction manager or construction administrator, and that's what that we didn't have.
I think your comments are fair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marsucci. Other comments or questions about this item? Clearly, seeing the board's reaction to this and asking the questions that we all have regarding the bond indicates our awareness of the community and their issues, and certainly our desire to answer to those, particularly as we go back out to the community and ask for their support with this bond for our students. So we have a motion and a second for both items 15 and 16 from ASC. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Very good. Moving on then to, from consent to the information part of the agenda with the board calendar. And of course, we're gearing up for the starting of school this week on Thursday. But I know that I can see that there are other folks, Mrs. Reagans and Mr. Stefan for sure, who'd like to point out some of those items. So
Yes,
Mrs. Reagans, please.
we are back in school on Thursday, so please, all of you out there that are driving around our schools, please be careful. There will be little ones and big ones running off to class, so please give them an extra leeway for the first few days while they get their sea legs again. And something that I wanted to highlight is that on September 5th, it's not listed here, but we did in our last agenda approve the renaming of our community day school to be the Jean Drevno Community Day School, and we will be doing that on September 5th at the community day school at 10 o'clock in the morning. And we would like to have any of you in the community that can to join us. Unfortunately, Ms. Drevno will not be there as she has passed away in the meantime, so we will be definitely honoring Jean on that day. But didn't want to let that go without letting folks know it was coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Reagans. Mr. Stefan.
That was the same thing.
Okay. All right, and then we'll move on then from the board calendar. And I'll do my report. We're now at the comments from members of the Board of Education, so I'll do my report on SoCal Rock, as we call it these days. With SoCal Rock, previously known as SCROC, we have a new building project, which is very exciting. And when we talk about that project, I dream, of course, of where we're going to be here after we pass this bond and being involved in those projects. But we do have a bit of work ahead of us before that happens. So very exciting projects as we can meet the needs of students better with those new facilities. The SoCal Rock staff have been very involved, of course, as we move towards the new semester, semester for me at the university, but the new starting of the new school year, with working with districts to put together the district programs and the courses that are going to be offered and such. And so we generally do a very good job of that with this district, and work closely with SoCal Rock to provide programs that we would otherwise not offer. And so to that end, I want to talk about a program that we're talking through right now, which is an orchestra program. And as the board knows, this is a program that we cut as we went through the $9.5 million worth of cuts. And so we have preliminary discussions going on about this program, but the idea is to work with SoCal Rock and perhaps offer a program that could take the place of the program that we had to cut. And so that's where this type of a program with SoCal Rock and this type of a partnership and articulation, I think, can work very well for our students, but also for the center. And at any rate, so hopefully I'll be reporting good news about that, and if it works, I will, and if not, I'll tell you that it didn't work either. So hopefully that moves along, and I know we're working on that. So with that said, we'll move on then to the report from the board's representative to the joint meeting of the Citizen Development and Enrichment Committee, so the Joint City and District Committee. Our representatives are Mr. Murasucci and Mr. Lee. And so do one or both of you want to just speak a little bit about?
You acted as the chairman, but okay,
I'll defer to the former councilman to give the...
That was a pretty damning remark, but okay. They're home watching that. It's all men and all good cheer. We talked about formalization of some lease documents as they related to the the Griffith Adult School and formalizing some things there and working on some items there, as well as maybe talking about the Plaza Del Amo extensions and possible how we can kind of clean some stuff up, help some traffic flows for the city, and be able to maximize our potentials as a school district as it relates to the general campus around here in Torrance High. Very good meeting. We've decided to meet quarterly on a regular basis to kind of start that going. As one who sat through a few of them on the other side, the meeting went very well, was very collaborative, and I look forward to the next one. So that tells you how much I liked it, because meetings aren't something I normally look forward to. Thank you. Anything you'd like to add, Al?
Yeah, I just want to add that we also had the informational session on our 2 school bonds, so the city, the 3 city councilmen who were there, Councilman Tom Brewer, Councilman Gene Barnett, and Councilman Pat Fury, were fully briefed as to the 2 proposed, the 2 bond measures that we will have on the November ballot. But I also felt strong